Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Aashna Parikh, a diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, consultant and inclusive marketing specialist. Living with cerebral palsy and learning disabilities, she's consulted and collaborated with Forbes-listed and Fortune 500 companies across diverse sectors such as Fintech, sustainability, agriculture, and technology. A strong advocate for neurodiversity, disability, and gender, she examines these issues through an intersectional lens, focusing on data-driven insights to drive organizational change. Her core strengths in research, collaboration, and communication empower her to navigate complexities and devise inclusive strategies. Aashna, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for calling me in this podcast. It's really amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show. So, I'd love to learn more about your personal story and your experiences. So, what was it like growing up with cerebral palsy and learning disabilities?
Honestly, I'll be very honest with you. My lived experience is very different than people probably living in India with disability. So it was my mother who noticed that I was walking on my toes, and that's how she was realizing that I'm not working properly. And it's not like a normal, thing. So she decided to get me to a doctor, and then we got the diagnosis that I'm diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And then by the age of 5, I got my operation done. And after that, I had a lot of physical therapy done to make sure that I'm able to work and basically not walk on my toes. So that was that. And it was because of my mother's diagnosis and observation that we actually got it early. And so the percentage of it is really like low. It's around 20%, not more than that. And I'm a monoplegic, so just in my left leg. I'm not quadriplegic because there are types of cerebral palsy, right? Like there are different types of it. So I've got monoplegia.
Yeah, so you mentioned that your mother was the one who noticed it through your developmental milestones, noticed that you were walking in a different way. Did she also identify or notice that there were differences in the way that you were learning in terms of reading or things like that?
Yes. So once we started basically my school, and she noticed that I'm fumbling with words, I'm not able to read, and I'm doing spelling errors. She noticed that this is it, and then she's also a teacher, so she basically sat down with me and decided to give me lessons that, hey, let's take it slow, and how about we learn from the scratch. So literally she sat with me every day to make sure that I'm able to read, learn very calmly. And she did her own practices where, let's say it felt for me like a game. Like, how about we pronounce this word? So to make me ease into it. So that's what she did, and it really made me feel more confident. And that's how my journey is about with her.
Oh, wow. So her experience as a teacher, she naturally changed her teaching style to help you learn in different ways that really worked for you. Wow.
Yes, definitely. So that was really, I'm really grateful for my mother specifically in terms of that she had that patience in her to sit with me. Because what happens as a child, you have a tendency that if you're not doing well, your parent must be angry with you, or just be like, oh, you will do it on your own. I should not do. I like, why will I sit with you? But I'm grateful to have a mother who's basically understanding in terms of, oh, she needed help. And the good part was that she observed everything very clearly. She knew that I was a disabled child, but with that she knew that there were a lot of consequences of that as well. So she made sure that I am learning perfectly. I'm making my progress. She, little day by day, she made sure that I'm making progress.
Mhm. That's great. So, what was it like for you in school? So, you have the support at home from your mother who just naturally came in and supported you with your learning. But what was school like? Because I'm assuming that maybe it took more time in school to identify what was really going on.
So my mom knew from the beginning that I might have dyslexia and dyscalculia and like dysgraphia. But at school, when I started, since I had a lot of support from her in terms of, I used to spend a lot of hours, extra hours, to make sure that I'm reading, writing properly. So it would show at my in my school exams and everything. And then in my 8th grade, my mother decided to have a formal diagnosis. which would help me to learn, because I used to fail at specifically mathematics. And it was really terrible for me because, I used to fail in the exam and everyone used to tease about me. There was a lot of bullying around in the school because of it. And the other thing was I used to also wear the different kind of shoes because of my cerebral palsy. So there was a lot of eyes on me all the time. I could always see people staring at me, making me feel really uncomfortable. But I did find a lot of friends and like a lot of comfort in terms of teachers. They were there for me. There were both sides, I would say. One side was which was not nice. People used to stare at me and make fun of me. But the other side was that I had some people, and I also found the one way which really made me comfortable in school was music. I decided to join school choir, and which was really amazing for me. I loved spending time in that. So it kind of distracted me from all the negative part where people were bullying me and not making me feel really bad about myself. So I did went through a lot of anxiety, I would say. I was very conscious about myself, about the way I talk in school or the way I move, So yeah.
It sounds like it was in eighth grade when you got your formal diagnosis. That's when you officially found out that you are neurodivergent, even though your mother knew from when you were much younger. Did your life change in any significant way after getting your diagnosis?
Yes, because since I got the diagnosis, it was like a missing puzzle piece for me. That that, oh, that's why I'm so bad at math. I used to always cry, and especially during the exam, I used to sweat a lot. My hands were sweaty, my feet were cold. So I kind of got a little self confidence. Okay, this is it, and maybe I can manage things around it. Or maybe this maths is not cup of my tea because of dyscalculia. And it's okay. I was performing amazing in other subjects like languages, geography, history. I was doing great, but it was just maths which was really bugging me, and I was like, I don't know how do I figure this out and what will happen. It was really relief for me when it comes to getting diagnosed when I was a child. What I really know is that I am this confident and this empowered just because of my family and the correct friends I have who were always there for me in school, right? So I know this is not the story of every person who is neurodivergent and disabled. So I know that this is my privilege that my family caught it early, and I had a really support system when it comes to managing a lot of I would not say difficulties, but like complexes of having not a neurotypical brain. I used to always stress about this, that even if it's a maths exam, I used to always be worried that how will I do in the paper, will I be able to write or not. So after dyscalculia, I was able to, after diagnosis for dyslexia, dysgraphia, and more accommodations. Such accommodations really were helpful for me, but it was kind of isolating also, I would not lie, because in school what used to happen was they used to make us sit in a different room. So how do I tell this to my friends that, oh, I'm not going to sit with you during the exam? So I used to make some excuses that I'm not well today, or just to like hide it, because I was still a child and I was still uncomfortable. It was kind of uncomfortable in school to sit in a different class just to get extra reading time or writing time. It was great on the part of education system, but I don't like this where the person is completely isolated from the whole bunch of class, which actually brings a lot of eyes on you rather than you being confident about it. So yeah, that's what happened with me.
Yeah, it sounds like the accommodations that you got in school were helpful, but at the same time, it's that there's always that, I don't want to say stigma, or people just looking at it like, why is she going to another room, or why is this different? Why is she in a different situation than I am, or having that self-awareness about it too. Do you feel that you faced more stigma because of your physical disability or your learning disabilities, or was there a difference that you felt?
So honestly, I did face a lot of stigma, not just because of my physical disability, but also learning disability. And I'm still able to work run, etc., do everything which I can, possibly because of my like continuous physical therapy and the low percentage of my disability. So there's this always invisible, I feel always invisible, because I don't fit in the criteria when you say a person is disabled. You always when you say disabled, you say you always believe that the person has to be on the wheelchair, or not able to work. This is what usually the representation of disability is, right? When it comes especially a media, that the person might be is disabled if they need support, or if they're not able to walk properly. So I felt invisible. Even after joining a disabled community, I still feel invisible, because my struggles are quite different as compared to them, because I kind of try to fit in normal. Like I don't know where I stand. You know, People usually do invalidate my feelings. Like for example, that day I went to a washroom, and there was a washroom for people with disabilities, and that lady just asked me very carelessly, and you don't look disabled. Why are you using that washroom? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't know how to answer that, because I might not look disabled, but there might be a chance that I am disabled.
Mm-hmm.
How do I say aloud? And I've come to terms with my disability after very long battle with myself. I won't lie there, especially because there's a lot of a battle between my self-esteem and the way I look to other people and the way people perceive me. It's quite different. So there's a lot of, I would say, battles between two identities, where I want to do normal things, like for example, wearing heels, for that matter. Look, uh, you know looking very pretty when it comes to wearing 5-inch heels and like rocking it and not having a fall. And that really bothers me. It must look petty to people. It must look shallow, but for you, when you don't have it, you realize, oh, this is what I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
You-
Yeah.
so yeah, I do feel a little invisible when it comes to I'm still not very accustomed to the part where I call myself disabled. Like I've recently come to my terms and say that, yeah, I am disabled, so what? I've decided to question people now, because now as a 23-year-old, it's really important that I take stand for myself where people don't. I actually don't give a damn about people, sorry for my language,
Mm-hmm.
what they think about me. And I say, just, what? Just mind your own business. How about you do that? Instead of, or asking me, no, just ask a person. Just like you ask a person, what are your pronouns?
Yeah.
You can ask a person that, hey, you know, do you have a disability? Or put it in a nicer way. There's a nicer way to ask questions.
Absolutely. And that's a challenge, definitely here in the United States as well, in terms of people making assumptions about what a disabled person is supposed to look like or act like. Even people who are wheelchair users full time get challenged as well. And, certainly if you use a different mobility aid, or if you don't use it all the time, or if you don't quote unquote look disabled, some people will come up and almost demand your medical history, or demand you tell them about maybe it's a traumatic experience in your life. You don't know, everyone's different. So yeah, that's a problem.
And
Yeah.
especially in India, there's a lot of stigma around people with disabilities. People don't accept their children.
Yeah.
They basically disown them.
Wow.
They do that when it comes to especially physical disability, when they know. From my childhood, what I could remember was, whenever I used to visit the clinic, I used to see you know parents being very rude to their children, being not nice to the children, despite of doing exercises, or doing the best which they can. And I was so fortunate enough to have a family who's always encouraging that you can do your best. It's a part of you. It's not your full identity. You can make your identity even if you are an individual with disability.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, it's not your full identity, although it's an important part of your identity, and it doesn't necessarily definitively determine what your future is going to look like. As individuals, we all have different strengths and different access to different things. So, yeah, absolutely. So now you continue your passion in the type of work that you do with helping people and companies implement diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, yeah, I'd love to learn more about the type of work you do in DEI.
So currently where I'm working is also a US based firm. It's called Backpack, where I basically work as a diversity inclusion consultant, and my specialty is disability advocacy. So what I do is to make workplaces, especially in US, more inclusive when it comes to people with disabilities, and I try to make sure that they understand what is, for example, neurodivergence or neurodiversity. What's it all about? And my work also revolves around advising firms what policies should they basically implement when it comes to people with disability, and how do they make feel people with disabilities included in the firm. So it could be as simple as how do you put your resume, or how do you basically invite people with disabilities when it comes to that you have a hiring. How do you be disabled inclusive even when it comes to your job description?
Yeah.
Not mention fast pace,
Yeah.
for example. That's very, very neurotypical when you say you need a person who's working in the fast paced working space. So it's very ableist, I kind of feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also work around ERGs, trainings for making people understand what, not just disability, diversity around gender, some basics to learn what DEI is all about. How do you make people feel inclusive and belong? Because in companies, what usually happens is their workspace is not, they just care about what work they do. They don't care about how the employee feels. So what I want companies is to make sure that they're little empathetic towards people who are working for them, and also make sure that they are not disrespecting or discriminating people against because of their religion, race, and disability.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about, having employees feel like they can come to work and bring their best and also making it possible for them. So through accommodations or other adjustments in the workplace, many of which are very small. You want your employees to bring their best to work and do their best work for you. So it just makes sense. You also, we said in your bio that you examine a lot of DEI issues through an intersectional lens. And you mentioned some just now, like religion and disability and neurodiversity. How do you help with those conversations as well? Because I think a lot of people don't think about that.
So intersection should be the new, I think, trend. Because what happens is that, let's say you are an individual who also identifies as a lesbian and is also a disabled individual. So there is a mixture of two identities together, and the way you face oppression in the society is quite different. And through my education, so I've done my bachelor's in sociology, and that's how I came to know the word about intersection. And that's why I realized that this is the way forward, because we don't know the other person who can have multiple identities. Like, for example, let's say it could be as simple as a woman being working woman and also a wife. She has to manage both. So there has to be an intersection lens coming across and saying that, oh, how do we manage this both? How do we make sure that this particular female is able to feel comfortable in workspace and at home? So this is what intersection is all about, where you basically understand and see that there is not just one identity. It could be multiple identities coming together and intersecting together.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind, and that those needs may change in employees' life over time. So, if someone has children, if they have very young children versus when their children are teenagers and grown, that's very different experiences and needs. I know we talked about some accommodations that you had gotten in school after your diagnosis. Have you needed to ask for disability accommodations at work? And what was that experience of asking like for you?
So for my disability accommodation was always about getting more leaves, uh, basically telling them that I might need a leave, emergency leave, because I might have a fall, or I might get sick. But in terms of my learning disabilities, I would always ask my basically my colleague to, for example, send me or write down meeting notes to help me understand what exactly is going, or to just know the agenda of the meeting before the meeting happens. It made me very confident because I knew what is going to be covered in the meeting. So that's what I asked for in my company. But I was fortunate enough to have a company which was very broad-minded and open-minded in terms of asking me this question during my interview. We had a trip, basically a retreat, where my company made sure that before booking anything, they were asking me, do you need any travel accommodations or anything, to make sure that I am comfortable, right? So I was fortunate enough to have this company. And also it's also because it's a US based company. That is the also one of the reason why this question was asked, because usually what happens in Indian workspaces is they don't ask you this question. They don't even ask you that even do you have a disability,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And even if I basically disclose it, they be like, oh, next, I don't think we can, hire you because of your disability. So there's a discrimination specifically in jobs, especially in Indian workspaces, which really needs to be changed. But I was just asked about my accommodation, and I upfrontly said about that this is what I want, and they were happily given to me.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And that's a question that can help. You should, companies should ask any employees that. So whether or not they know that they have a disability, it's something that's really helpful for everyone. So it's not, you don't have to know someone's identity or status before you ask that. That's good.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Wow. And so you've had a unique experience because you live in India, so you've had experience with Indian companies, but you also have experience working with a US based company, so you kind of get to see how DEI is maybe a little different in different countries, and you touched on some of those differences as well. In the work that you've done, either in consulting or other companies, have you seen how DEI is addressed in other countries besides India and the US?
So I would say UK is also very open to DEI.
Mm-hmm.
So what my normal basic observation is that when it comes to Western countries abroad, they are very open with DEI. But recently I got laid off. So um, DEI is also not priority for people in US, especially in companies, not in US, but I would say in companies, especially disability is not their priority, because whenever I used to come in and say that, oh, this needs to be changed, then there was a chance that clients were not okay with it, like, addressing it.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh, let's do this later. Or, you know, how about we look into this after some time. They were not very open to it, but there were some clients who were like, let's deep dive into it, we would really love to learn more about this. So it actually really depends from companies culture and goal and mission, what exactly are they looking forward to, and what are their goals. So but overall I would say in India it's not a great place to work at, especially when you're an individual with disability, because you do face a lot of discrimination, and there are chances where you feel excluded. It depends from a company to company, but the experiences are quite similar because people are still not comfortable about having a conversation around disability or gender for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like, as you said, it depends on the company and the culture and their individual goals. Like, are they really committed to DEI, or is it just something that they're sort of temporarily committed to? Or, how serious are they about making recommendations and changing parts of their business? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What advice would you have for people with learning disabilities or even physical disabilities who may feel nervous about asking for accommodations at work?
So I would say the first thing is being confident about your own identity, accept that you have a disability and you might need help. the self-awareness that, okay, you have a disability and how do we manage it? Because truly I feel that disability is fluid. It can happen anytime to anyone. It can happen to an individual even after an accident for that matter, or you can even be born with it. It can happen to anyone at any given point of time. So the first thing is being self aware about your weaknesses, to say, and also your strengths. So what I used to do is, before every interview, I used to basically write down my strengths and weaknesses, that this is what I'm good at and this is what I might need help with. So, and then when they ask about accommodations, I would say that these are my accommodations, being very confident in your voice and say that if you're able to offer it, I would love to work with you. You know, the thing is, when you're working at a company, you're spending at least 6-7 hours a day there.
Yeah.
So it has to be a comfortable space for you, a safe space for you. And what usually happens is that if you realize that the company is not safe, or you're not able to disclose even your disability, before giving any interview, I would recommend everyone, every basically individual, to learn about that company, right? Research about that company more. Now we have a lot of job portals as well, right? So you can go on those and ask people who are already working there that what's the culture like,
Yeah.
to have some knowledge about the company beforehand itself, and then you can disclose your disability and then ask for accommodation.
Yeah.
So the step one, I would say, is self-awareness. Second is doing your research around what companies are you applying to. Third would be writing down things. Even if you feel very uncomfortable in the interview, you can ask them, like, can I have a moment?
Yeah.
And just remove that paper and just say that these are the accommodations I want. If you feel uncomfortable, you can always look to that paper and then speak to them.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what basically I do when it comes to interviewing people and like interviewing, giving interviews for companies. And make sure that you know where you need help,
Yeah.
know your strengths, and make sure that you give your best. And I know that there's a lot of noise. There might be noise around in the office when you start asking if you get an accommodation. There is a chance that that happens too. But just make sure that you are that, I would say, not strong, but I would say being very confident about it, that this is who I am, being very confident about your identity.
Yeah, that's really good advice and a really good way to look at it throughout the entire process of being employed somewhere, from when you're initially job searching, going through the interview process, and then when you're starting, and just doing that research. As you said, there's so many more resources out there with, social media and LinkedIn. You can talk to people who work at the company and just try to get an understanding of what's the culture really like? How do people really treat each other? How open is the company to people's differences and making accommodations so that people can do their best work at work? Yeah, absolutely. Aashna, it's been great talking with you today, and thank you so much for sharing your experience. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the work that you do?
So they can go on my LinkedIn and also reach out to me through my email, which will be in the description.
Great. Yep. I'll put your LinkedIn and your email in the description as well. As we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know, or anything they can help or support you with?
So I'll be very honest that since I'm on the lookout for new opportunities, I would really love companies to become more disable inclusive, not just disable inclusive, but also really thoroughly work on their DEI goals.
Mhm.
So I would love people to connect with me or connect with more people who know brands who would love to be DEI friendly in this world. So yeah,
That's
that's that can help me.
perfect. Yeah. And you have international experience with global companies. So that's great. Thank you so much, Aashna. It was great talking with you. Thank you for sharing your story and your experience on my show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.